your nervous system is getting new information. You're starting to pair movement with a sense of safety instead of danger. Are you ready to get back to what you love after knee replacement? The Total Knee Success Podcast is your trusted guide with practical tips, evidence-based strategies, and no fluff. It's not personal medical advice, just solid education to help you manage pain, regain mobility, and get back to living the life you love. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Total Knee Success Podcast. I'm Michelle. If you've been listening to the last couple of episodes, you've started to see that pain after knee replacement is not always as straightforward as it seems. At the end of this episode, you'll understand what's actually possible when it comes to changing pain and feel more confident in your ability to influence it over time. This is the fourth and final episode in our four-part series on pain. If you haven't listened to episodes 63 through 65 yet, you can always go back after this. They'll give you more context for what we're talking about today. I want to bring you back to Linda, someone we've been following through this series, a made-up patient we use to walk through what many people experience after knee replacement. At this point, Linda has started to apply some of the strategies we talked about in the last episode. She's not avoiding movement completely. She's being more consistent, and she's starting to adjust how she responds when pain shows up. And what she's noticing is that things are beginning to feel a little more predictable. Not perfect, but different. And that shift brings up a really important question. Can pain actually change over time? The short answer is yes, but not always in the way people expect. One of the key concepts behind that is something called neuroplasticity, which means your nervous system has the ability to change and adapt based on what it experiences. Just like your muscles adapt to exercise, your nervous system adapts to patterns. In the earlier episodes, we talked about how pain can become a learned pattern, and that same idea is also what makes change possible. The system that learned the pattern can also begin to change, not by erasing it, but by building new learning and new pathways alongside it. You may have heard the phrase, "What fires together, wires together," meaning the more often something is repeated, the stronger it becomes over time. And the same is true in the other direction. As new patterns are repeated, they can begin to take over. And this is where it becomes very practical. Every time you move in a way that feels manageable, even if it's not completely comfortable, and your symptoms stay manageable or settled afterward, your nervous system is getting new information. You're starting to pair movement with a sense of safety instead of danger. And over time, those experiences begin to add up and shift how your system responds. It's a bit like rinse and repeat. The more often you have those safer movement experiences, the more your nervous system starts to learn from them. That doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't mean pain suddenly disappears. But it does mean that the system is not stuck and it can change. For Linda, this started to show up in specific ways. For example, standing to make a meal or walking down her long driveway to the mailbox used to trigger a sudden spike in pain that made her stop and tense up. Over time, those same activities began to feel more manageable. The discomfort might still show up, but it built more gradually. And instead of immediately stopping, she could slow down, adjust, and keep going. That shift gave her a sense of control, instead of feeling caught off guard by what her knee was doing. That shift helps because when pain feels less random and more predictable, your nervous system starts to feel safer, which can reduce how reactive it is. And part of what shapes that sense of safety is what you expect to happen. Have you ever noticed that if you expect something to hurt, it often does? What you expect to happen can influence how your body responds. If you're anticipating pain with every step or movement, your nervous system can become more protective. But if that expectation starts to shift, your response can shift with it. This is what researchers describe with placebo and nocebo effects. Placebo is when something helps you feel better because you expect it to help, even if the treatment itself is neutral. Nocebo is the opposite, where expecting something to hurt or go poorly can actually increase your pain or sensitivity. That doesn't mean pain is imagined. It means your brain is constantly interpreting information and making predictions, and those predictions influence what you feel. In other words, your brain is always asking, is this safe or not? And adjusting the level of pain based on that. When it predicts more threat, it can turn the volume up. And when it starts to feel safer, it can begin to turn that volume down. For Linda, this meant shifting from expecting pain with every movement to noticing that it didn't always feel the same. And even that small shift can begin to change how your body responds. This is also where strategies from the last episode continue to make a difference, because those strategies are what give your system new experiences to learn from. Consistent movement, gradual exposure, and adjusting instead of avoiding or pushing through are the inputs that help reshape the pattern over time. And for some people, there are also additional tools that can help support this process. Tools like medication can also play a role in helping settle symptoms enough to keep moving forward. That might include something like Tylenol or an anti-inflammatory, which can sometimes help turn the volume down, so these strategies are easier to apply. You may also hear about things like CBD or cannabis-based products. Those are not something I'm going to get into here, but some people report effects like improved relaxation or sleep, which can indirectly influence how their system responds. None of these are a whole solution, but they can be part of the picture. Any decision about medication or these types of products should be discussed with your medical team so it's appropriate and safe for your specific situation. You may also come across other tools for pain, things like electrical stimulation, hands-on treatments, or different recovery approaches. Some of these can help settle symptoms in the short term, but they don't replace the process we've been talking about here. If you're interested in how these fit and when they might be useful, I go into that in more detail in the educational download I mentioned, so you can see how they connect to the bigger picture. This also doesn't mean that all pain changes in the same way for everyone. There are still structural changes, individual differences, and other factors that play a role. But what it does mean is that for many people, pain can become less intense, less frequent, and less limiting. And that's a meaningful change. For Linda, this showed up again in a very specific way in her daily walk. She used to step outside and decide in the moment how far to go. If her knee felt good, she would keep going and sometimes double her usual distance. If it started to hurt, she'd turn around early or skip the next day entirely. Instead, she chose a set route, walking to the second mailbox on her street and back, something she could repeat most days. Even if her knee felt a little sensitive, she stuck with the plan, slowing her pace or taking a short pause if needed, and most days completing a similar distance. Over time, that consistency gave her body something more predictable to learn from. One of the most common questions at this point is, how long does it take? And the honest answer is that it varies or it depends. Some people start to notice small changes within a few weeks, like things feeling a little more predictable or manageable. For others, it can take a few months of consistent input for those changes to build. What we usually look for first is not pain completely disappearing, but those early signs we talked about, things feeling less reactive, more consistent, and a little easier to work with. So if you're thinking about your own situation, you might start to ask yourself a few questions. Where am I starting to notice even small changes in how my knee responds? What feels a little more predictable at this point than it did a few weeks ago? And where do I feel I have just a little more control than I used to? Those are often early signs that things are starting to shift, even before the pain itself changes in a big way. This is also the point where a lot of people start to understand what's happening, but still feel unsure how to apply it consistently in their own day-to-day life. And that's a very normal place to be. If you're interested in going a little deeper into this topic, I've put together a short 30-page educational download called Making Sense of Pain After Knee Replacement. It walks through these concepts in a little more detail and helps you understand how they might be applied. You can find a link in the show notes if you'd like to check it out. Before we wrap up, a quick safety note. Most of what we talked about in this series reflects normal patterns in how pain can behave after knee replacement. There are, however, situations where pain may signal something outside the usual pattern. Things like increasing calf pain with swelling or tenderness, shortness of breath, chest pain, a fever, or a knee that's becoming more red, hot, and swollen instead of gradually settling. These can be signs that something else is going on. If you notice these kinds of symptoms, it's important to contact your surgeon or medical team so they can evaluate what's happening. If your pain feels severe, worsening, or significantly limiting your ability to move or function, that's also a signal to pause and reach out to your medical team or qualified physical therapy professional for some guidance. You don't have to navigate that on your own. Next time, we're going to shift gears and start a new series focused on walking and gait after knee replacement, beginning with episode 67. You're not stuck in this, and even small changes in how your system responds can start to add up over time. And that's where things can really begin to move in a different direction. Thanks for joining me. I'm Michelle, and this has been the Total Knee Success Podcast. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Discover more at totalkneesuccess.com, and be sure to subscribe and share, because every step forward takes you closer to living the life you love.